Hello, everyone, and welcome back. You're listening to Ethan Blackthorne, and today we continue our China True Crime series with a case that took place in Liang City, Changzhou, Jiangsu Province. This is the story of a murderer who, because of one of the four deadly vices, gambling, drinking, drugs, or prostitution, fell from wealth and admiration to the bottom of society. Once a successful businessman with quick wit and sharp thinking, he would go on to commit a killing and hide the victim's body in a way so unusual that no one could have imagined it. It took more than 2 years before the victim's remains were found, allowing the case to be solved. Let's dive into the story. It was the end of September 2010, in the outskirts of Liang City, after days of heavy rainfall. The water had risen high, and several days later, as villagers returned to their fields to check their crops as usual, they stumbled upon something they would never forget. In an abandoned rice paddy in a remote area, they found a human skull, bare, with only a few traces of bone left. Shocked and frightened, they immediately called the police. When police arrived at the scene, they noted the location was about 5 kilometers from National Highway 9. The skull lay among thick weeds and overgrown grass in the abandoned field. The edges of the field were lined with dense bushes, and the bones were partially covered by dry, withered vegetation. It was likely that, until the recent heavy rains had washed away the mud, grass, and debris, no one had noticed the skull's presence. The police cordoned off the area and spent the next 2 days excavating. They uncovered over 100 bone fragments, enough to reconstruct a nearly complete skeleton. All of the remains belonged to a single victim. Forensic examination showed the victim was a young woman, about 25 years old. Based on calcium content and bone structure, she had given birth before. By reconstructing the skeleton and measuring the length of the shin bones, they estimated her height to be around 1.6 meters, about 5.3. The time of death was determined to be over a year earlier, since only bones remained. Other identifying features, such as tattoos or scars, were impossible to detect. There were no personal documents at the scene, and forensic experts couldn't determine the exact cause of death, as there were no obvious fractures or cut marks on the bones. However, given the remote location and the method of concealing the body, police were convinced it was homicide. Nearby, police found 2 objects that might belong to the victim: a left-foot women's athletic shoe in blue and black, a dark red hair tie. Given the isolated location and the wear on these items, consistent with the victim's estimated time of death, investigators hoped they could help identify her. The next step was to compare these clues with the database of missing women aged 20-30 from Liang City who had been reported missing within the past 1 to 5 years. The list was long, dozens of names. As police began verifying each case and conducting DNA tests with families, a crucial lead emerged. After police posted a reward announcement online seeking help in identifying the remains, someone quickly recognized the shoe, both its design and size, as a pair he had bought for a woman as a birthday gift before she disappeared. The victim's name was Liu Baiyuan, a taxi driver in Liang City. She lived about 10 kilometers from the site where the remains were found. When her body was discovered, it had been over 2 years since she was first reported missing. Back then, no one could have imagined her case would remain unsolved for so long. On the morning of September 5, 2008, her husband, Huan Nguyen Tao, walked into the Liang City Public Security Bureau to file a missing person report. His wife, he told them, was only 25 years old and had not come home the previous night. Leah worked as an independent taxi driver, owning her own car and operating without a company license, the kind locals often called an unregistered taxi. Her husband was also a driver, but for a licensed taxi company. Tao explained that on the night of September 4th, he was waiting for passengers near the city center when he spotted his wife's car parked in front of a large supermarket. He had no idea this would be the last time he would see her, or the car. Around 9 p.m., another taxi driver witnessed a man open the rear door of Liu's car and get in without any fair negotiation. That was unusual. With unregistered taxis, passengers normally bargain over price before boarding. The witness therefore assumed the rider knew Liu. He could not describe the man's face because it was dark and he watched from more than 10 meters away while sitting in his own car. What he remembered. The man was about 1.6 or tall, slim, and wore dark clothing. Police checked Liu's relationships. Her social circle was small. There were no obvious conflicts. She and Tao had a 2-year-old son who lived with his paternal grandparents because both parents worked long hours. They hoped to bring the child home once they had saved enough. Plans that ended that night. Investigators reviewed cameras near the supermarket. One grainy clip showed Liu's taxi leaving the lot and heading southwest out of the city. But in 2008, Liang did not have today's dense camera network, so tracking the route further was difficult. Tao offered an important detail. Liu had a regular male passenger who often called her at night to book rides. Tao had warned her about late-night trips, but she kept accepting them to earn more. Phone records pointed to Fan Quan, a 45-year-old businessman from Changlin, Anhui. He was about 1.65 meter, slim, married, and familiar with Liang. He even owned a property a few hundred meters from the supermarket. That made it plausible he could walk to the pickup spot, explaining why there were no calls between them that night. Questioned by police, Fan admitted he often hired Liu and liked her, but denied being the passenger on September 4th. He said he had dinner and drinks with friends around 7 o'clock p.m. and went straight home afterward. His friends confirmed the early dinner, but no one could vouch for his whereabouts later that night. Police also considered Tao a suspect. He reported his wife missing very early, the next morning after failing to reach her around 9 o'clock p.m. Given his job, he knew long-distance fares or a dead phone battery could explain an overnight absence. Why was he so sure something bad had happened? GPS logs and dispatch records from Tao's taxi company answered that question. Tao was on a scheduled overnight shift and was recorded continuously taking fares throughout the night. With that firm alibi, police eliminated him. That left Fan Quan as no body, no direct evidence, and no witness placing him with Liu in the car that night. The investigation stalled. For months, the case went nowhere. With no confirmed suspect, no witness, and no body, Liu Baiyuan's disappearance remained a mystery. But the one solid lead investigators still had was her car. If they could trace its movements on the night of September 4th, it might reveal where she went, and possibly what happened to her. From supermarket CCTV, the taxi was last seen heading southwest. Police then checked a toll station on the southwestern outskirts of Liang, nearly 80 kilometers from the city center. Footage from 9:29 p.m. showed Liu's silver-white taxi passing through the toll gate. Over the next several days, investigators collected more than 50 surveillance videos from toll booths and road checkpoints along potential routes. After hours of reviewing footage, they managed to reconstruct part of the car's journey. The route showed the taxi traveling from Liang through Langtan, then onto the expressway toward Xuanshan, and finally entering Nanling town in Anhui province. One grainy camera, positioned head-on, revealed something chilling. The driver was not a woman. Even though the image was blurry, it was clear that by the time the car reached Nanling, Liu was no longer behind the wheel. This meant she had likely been attacked and killed before reaching that point. The total distance covered that night was over 200 kilometers, taking 4 hours and 43 minutes. That worked out to an average speed of just over 40 kilometers, far too slow for a trip that was mostly on expressway. Somewhere along the way, the car must have stopped, possibly to commit the murder or dispose of the body. Between Xuanshan and Nanling, the trip should have taken just over an hour. Instead, it took 2.5 hours. Police immediately searched the more than 100 kilometers of expressway between these two points, but found nothing. On September 13, 2008, 9 days after Liu vanished, a break came. With help from local shop cameras and online appeals, police discovered the abandoned taxi on a deserted road in Nanling, Anhui. It had been thoroughly cleaned, No fingerprints, no hair, no footprints. The steering wheel, door handles, seats, and floor were spotless. Liu was nowhere to be found. Valuables she had with her, a gold ring, a mobile phone, a wallet, were missing. Strangely, the killer had also removed the license plates and even taken the car's MP3 player. To police, this suggested a perpetrator who understood how vehicles could be traced and was determined to remove anything of value. Still, the cleanup was not perfect. Investigators found dozens of cigarette butts under the driver's seat, evidence the driver was a heavy smoker. Liu, however, did not smoke. More importantly, in the narrow track of a sliding door, they found traces of blood. DNA tests confirmed most of it belonged to Liu, but one spot was from someone else. It didn't match her husband Tao or her regular passenger Fan Quan. The unknown male DNA was not in the national database at the time. From these findings, police could conclude a few things about the killer. He was male, a heavy smoker, able to drive, in financial difficulty in September 2008, knowledgeable about crime scene cleanup and police investigation, familiar with the route from Liang to Nanling. Even with this profile, there was still no name to attach to it. For the next 2 years, the case went cold. September 2010. 2 years had passed since Liu Baiyuan vanished. The investigation was frozen in place until nature itself gave police the break they needed. After days of heavy rain in Liang, villagers working in the field stumbled upon a human skull in an abandoned rice paddy. Police excavated the site and found a nearly complete skeleton. It was Liu, but the location raised an immediate question. Why was her body in Liang when her taxi had been abandoned in Nanling, Anhui, over 200 kilometers away? An experienced investigator offered one possible explanation. The killer had deliberately staged the vehicle dump in Anhui to mislead the investigation, ensuring police searched in the wrong place for years. This time, police combed the field carefully for anything they might have missed before. That's when they noticed something odd: snails. Snails are common in southern China's rice paddies, but here they were unnaturally dense, far beyond what would occur naturally. Local farmers recalled that back in September or October 2008, right after Liu disappeared, they had noticed a foul odor coming from that field. When they investigated, they saw the ground covered with snails clinging together in thick clusters. At the time, they assumed it was a rotting animal carcass and didn't think much of it. Forensic experts realized the killer had likely dumped a large quantity of snails onto the body. Snails are omnivores. They eat decaying matter, including human tissue. By feeding on the corpse and clustering over it, the snails would mask the smell of decomposition, accelerating the breakdown of soft tissue. Once only bones remained and the odor faded, the snails dispersed, leaving the skeleton hidden under weeds and debris until the heavy rains of 2010 exposed it. This was an unusually cunning disposal method, but it also hinted at the killer's background: access to large numbers of snails and knowledge of how to transport them. Following this lead, police checked local aquaculture and seafood transport businesses. One name stood out: Zhou Juntian, 42, married with 2 children, living about 10 kilometers from the field. He worked in seafood transport, including snails. He was also a heavy smoker, knew how to drive, and had a prior criminal record for theft in the 1980s. From 2002, Zhou made millions transporting seafood to major markets. Locals admired his success. But by early 2008, he had become addicted to gambling, losing everything. This period of financial ruin lined up exactly with the time of Liu's disappearance. Police began watching him closely, but without direct evidence, they couldn't demand a DNA sample outright. So they arrested Zhou during an illegal gambling game, bringing him and everyone else to the station. There, they collected blood samples under routine procedure. The results were clear. The blood found inside Liu's taxi matched Zhou's DNA. Still, he refused to confess. DNA proved he had been in the car and injured there, but not that he killed Liu. That changed when police searched Zhou's home. They found a gold ring and mobile phone that had belonged to Liu. Her husband confirmed they were hers. Photos taken before her death also showed her wearing the ring and using that phone. Faced with this evidence, Joe finally confessed. On the night of September 4th, 2008, after failing to borrow money from a friend over dinner, he walked to the supermarket where Liu's taxi was parked. Without discussing the fare, he got in. During the trip, they argued over price. Liu told him to get out and find another ride. Already drunk, broke, and bitter over his own downfall, Joe snapped. He asked her to stop in a deserted area so he could relieve himself. When she checked her phone, he attacked from behind, strangling her to death. During the struggle, his hand was cut on the sliding door, leaving the blood trace that police would find years later. Zhao removed Liu's gold ring, dragged her body into the abandoned field, and dumped it there. The next day, he returned with a large load of live snails, releasing them over the corpse to aid decomposition and mask the smell. He then drove the taxi to Nanling, Anhui, cleaned it thoroughly, removed the plates, and abandoned it, sending investigators on a 2-year hunt in the wrong location. In May 2011, the Changzhou Intermediate People's Court sentenced Zhou Juntian to death for intentional homicide. His life had swung from extremes. In his 20s, prison for theft. In his 30s, wealth from business. By 40, ruined by gambling. And finally, the death penalty for murder. It was a brutal reminder of how vice can destroy a person and everyone around them. Liu Baiyuan's story is especially tragic. She was a young mother, working hard to support her son, willing to take the risk of night fares to earn more. She never expected that one of those passengers would be her killer.